We're flying today to Tacloban City, one of the most stringent destinations to get into during the time of pandemic. And just how tough is the border restriction back then? Well, someone almost didn't make it to our flight. Find out what requirements were needed at that time and what happened along to our journey and back, right here on AIRLINE Travel and Airports. With domestic flights now flying between areas under general and modified general community quarantine, we set off to Tacloban City, one of the most stringent destinations to get into. And flying with me today on a humanitarian mission is subscriber Kenneth, who's about to experience firsthand how check-in agents can mean serious business when it comes to required travel documents. As a government healthcare worker on a mission, I didn't have problems checking in. But for Kenneth, who forgot to coordinate his letter of acceptance from a local government unit in Tacloban City, this got him in a serious situation that spelled trouble. As much as Kenneth pleaded, check-in agents could not accept him for the flight, as these are very strict rules they need to uphold for everyone's safety. Helpless, it was only a matter of time that Kenneth finds a way to present the needed document. Otherwise, he'll just have to go home and forget about today's flight.
If you're traveling to Tacloban, if you're in LSI, kailangan mo lang talaga ng proof of residency. Kung wala namang proof of residency, kung ang ID mo naman naka-address doon, okay na yun. Pero kung wala, pwede kang kumuha ng letter of acceptance, medical certificate, and travel authority, of course. For Accor, proof of intent or travel order and letter, and ID as well.
With our flight leaving early in the morning, it was difficult for Kenneth to get hold of a local official in Tacloban City. Worse, we were flying on a weekend where government offices are closed. For Kenneth, time was simply running out.
Ano nangyari sa'yo? Na-hold ako sa check-in counter ko. At pala hindi ako nagpaniwala sa Facebook. Bakit? Yung requirements pala, iba ang requirements sa Facebook sa actual, sa airport. Oh. So, hindi ka nag-update? Hindi. Paano yan? Anong naghihintay ka ngayon? Anong hintay mo? Yung tumawag na po sa ano ng barangay sa Tacloban. Oo, ano sabi? Ibibigyan na lang daw po ng travel acceptance sometime na lang. Bilis na, baka mamaya di pa umabot sa boarding yan. Hindi ma-imprento yung mukha. Ayan, nagsarahan na yung mga check-in counters. And hindi pa tumatawag yung Tacloban. So, last resort, baka mamaya maiwan siya. Uuwi ka mag-isa. Hindi. Pero nakita lang kami, we're hoping for a miracle na sana ma-print ka agad yung letter of acceptance at ma-send ka agad sa email. So, kahit daw, pwedeng pwedeng isend daw sa email, mas i-picture na lang daw. Yan.
With minutes left before boarding, what seemed to be a hopeless case for Kenneth was turned into a miracle, as there were check-in agents who had the heart to go the extra mile in calling Tacloban Station as well as the local government unit concerned. With photos of documents sent through email, Kenneth was finally accepted for the flight. A big sigh of relief from all the suspense brought about by one careless act. Now, what was once a feeling of uncertainty has now become a growing feeling of excitement as we walk towards the gate, making it just in time for boarding. I'm sure Kenneth is still in disbelief, even as we drew closer and closer to our assigned aircraft. Finally, we were on our way to Tacloban City. As a frequent flyer, it's no surprise to see the changes happening lately in air travel. But for Kenneth, who's traveling again for the first time during pandemic, it's simply an overwhelming experience, especially seeing crew members now in their protective suits and how every passenger must comply in wearing their face masks and face shields even inside the cabin. Boarding was quick, as there weren't that many passengers flying today. I'm pretty sure you can tell why, and shortly after doors were closed, we were eventually on our way and heading off for Tacloban City. Soon after takeoff, crew members go to their routine of serving snacks in the form of dried peas and bottled water. And with not too many passengers on board, I was handed out extra packets as a courtesy from crew member Brian, who doesn't seem to be that busy rendering his duties on board an almost empty flight. Later, I just had to ask how things are and what's happening lately in this airline.
Brian here, so he's also a subscriber. How are you guys so far?
So far sir, okay naman po yung mga flights na nung simula, nagkaroon ng malaking adjustment kasi syempre nagsusot ng PPE and everything, so medyo mahirap huminga gano'n, and communication po, medyo naging barrier yung mask.
Hindi mainit?
Breathable naman sir, so it's comfortable, minsan na yan lang.
So, you board the plane naka-uniform, then you don that. Tapos paglabas ng plane, tatagalin nila yan.
Yes sir, before we deplane, we remove our PPEs. And then, ayun po.
Yung
Reasonable po.
nung time na nawalan kayo ng flights, nabawasan kayo, how did you cope? Or how did you get by? Kasi yung iba nalungkot daw eh. Yung isa, I remember yung isang kasama ko dati nung kalitan ko si, I forgot her name. Pero nagbibenta siya ng avocado. Kilala
yes,
mo?
opo, si Ma'am M po.
Si M, so si Chavis din.
Opo.
Good. Ikaw, anong ginawa mo?
Ako naman sir, I focus on cooking kasi culinary graduate ako eh. So, pero hindi ako nagbenta sir. Siguro ano lang ako, na-enjoy ko lang yung magluluto lalo.
How is air travel picking up these days?
It's slowly picking up sir, slowly improving.
There are cabin crew aspirants still believing that one day they will become flight attendants or crew members like you. What message of inspiration can you give them? Kasi hanggang ngayon, ano pa sila, ayaw yung mag-give up eh.
Of course sir, ako nakaapat ako na tries before I got this.
Pero you were a crew member from other airlines before?
No sir,
Talagang...
I used to work in the kitchen and front desk. Siguro what I would give them as an advice is focus on themselves muna ngayong pandemic. Since na-hold yung hiring, focus on improving physically or also mentally siguro, prepare ganun sir. And then read a lot, especially about the airline, kung ano nangyayari sa aviation industry. And then ayun.
Well, it's good to know that things are improving, and after thanking Brian for some insights, I return to my seat to enjoy the remaining time we have, enjoying the clouds in the landscape as we descended and eventually touched down in Tacloban City. Despite only a handful of passengers on board, the crew never failed to treat us with their buong pusong alaga. It seems that we've been made welcome to our destination even before we touched the ground. For me, it's good to be back in Tacloban, with the nice weather greeting us as we disembarked. But for Kenneth, stepping into Tacloban for the first time is simply exhilarating. But our worries are not over yet, and Kenneth is still not off the hook, as we were told that further document checks are done before we can leave the airport's vicinity. This is how strict Tacloban City protects its residents, needing to screen every incoming passenger with temperature checks, including verification of documents and COVID test results, and scrutinizing one's purpose of travel. With all those, me and other fellow passengers are led further away and into a hall, where we were all gathered for an individual interview with border and health officers. It kind of felt like we were entering another country and being interrogated by an immigration officer, but having the required documents and an acceptable purpose of travel, we were eventually permitted to enter Tacloban City. On board a shuttle van that we hired, Kenneth can only give a big sigh of relief from all the suspense those document checks he had to go through. To loosen up, we had to pass by Zamora Street to buy some goods I needed to sell back home, as profit will somewhat answer for expenses incurred from our travel. Afterwards, we met Tacloban-based subscriber Clinton for snacks, before eventually retreating into a hotel called Z-Pad Residences and finally calling it a day. Next morning, we were back in Daniel Z. Romualdez Airport to catch our Philippine Airlines flight back to Manila. One thing we noticed in this small airport is how employees strictly uphold health and safety measures and how people comply with social distancing. At check-in, we were only asked about our purpose of travel and how long we've stayed here before needing to fill up contact tracing forms and eventually walking across a barren departure hall towards a verification booth. With our boarding passes verified, we get to fill up another form after another security check before we finally got to the gates. Yup, as expected, there aren't too many passengers flying at this time, that I was ready to see the waiting area filled with only a handful of people. Our plane finally arrives and it was only a matter of time before passengers are called to board a return flight. With our mission in Tacloban done, it was time for us to go home, recalling yesterday's gripping experience with something to learn from. You see, there's nothing really to be scared of if you've only followed and fulfilled what is required according to the rules of your destination. As for Kenneth's case, he failed to have his letters sent when he had days to prepare prior to our flight. Now, not everyone is as lucky as him to get a letter at the last minute, and I've personally seen some passengers get denied during check-in. Fortunately for him, things went well, and he was able to join me in this memorable trip as my travel buddy for the first time. Cabin preparations were done and we were soon taxiing. Once positioned, we were on a roll and soon taking off for Manila. Takeoff was quick, and you very well know what comes after when seatbelt signs turned off. Correct. Serving of snacks by crew members in their protective suits. And knowing that only dried peas are served, it's good to bring something else to fill your tummy. On the way, we savored the view of some islands down below, before being asked for contact tracing forms as collected by crew members. And not too long into our short flight, we were on final approach and eventually touching down in Manila. Recently, local government units have eased quarantine and documentary requirements, and people can now travel again to certain destinations in the Philippines without medical certificates and other paperwork. My advice, as rules change from time to time based on the evolving COVID-19 situation, it's best to directly inquire at the airline you're taking for any updates before you travel. The following day, I'm back to my workplace, and with a few hours to spare before I time in for my duty, I deliver some goods ordered by my colleagues who couldn't travel and visit their provinces for now. Getting certain items for them is one sideline I do to make an extra income, and it sure feels nice to see their faces brighten up upon receiving something they dearly missed. It's during these times I sure feel like Santa Claus delivering all these products to them. Yup, this is one way I also make some extra money, which answers part of my travel expenses. This is also how I generate a few extra to fund something that not too many people are aware of. As a nurse who frequently travels, I realize that there are still people in this world who'd go the extra mile, sharing their blessings to make other lives a little better. With all this, I pay all those favors forward, particularly to my patients, so they too can get a fighting chance to survive and pass on this act of sharing to others. For all this, remember that caring and being a light of inspiration to others gives a deeper sense to what we do, and to our lives, a meaningful purpose. This is Mitch Young, thank you for watching.